Dr. Isela Garcia, and welcome to Early Childhood Learning Bites. If you didn't know this already, supporting children's social and emotional learning and development is really, really hard work. Really hard work. Now, I've been in the field for a while, like over 30 years, and there has always been in early childhood education, particularly 0 to 5, conversations around social and emotional learning and development. We have talked about helping children feel safe and connected and ways that we can support friendships and helping them develop the language that they need to get their needs met. Like, those conversations are not new conversations. But what is new, I think, in the last several years, I would say probably at least the last 10 years or so, is the conversation around our roles and responsibilities in how we approach and care for young children in terms of their social and emotional learning and development. There have been many, many strategies in the past, including timeout, suspension, and these continue to happen today. Timeout, suspension, having a child go to the director's office or go sit someplace, and we don't call it timeout, we call it something else, but it looks like timeout, sounds like timeout. And so we use these punishment approaches, including trying to make a kid feel bad for what they did. Like, we use that as a strategy as well. Those strategies have been around for a very, very long time, very long time. And in the last many years in early childhood education, we have the research now to help us understand the impact of using punishment when we are supporting children's social and emotional learning and development, and when we are guiding and supporting their development of understanding how to be in the world, how to engage with others, how to get their needs met at a deeper level now than we ever have. And so we have to start to consider who we are. We have to start considering what we bring into our programs, into your family child care home, into our child care programs, whatever environment you work in. We have to consider our own personal experiences when we work with children. And at the beginning of this entire series, it's one of the things that I talked about for at least a couple segments, because it's important for us, it's super important for us to recognize our values and our beliefs and the things that we get activated by when a child behaves a certain way or says a certain thing, and we get really frustrated and we're like, that's not the way children need to behave and they need to be respectful and blah, 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 blah. All of those beliefs, right, come from somewhere within us. And so we have to grow an awareness and an understanding of how our belief systems actually impact our interactions, our actions, and even our thoughts about a child. So that has become more and more prevalent in the last many years in early childhood. So we're no longer just going, okay, here's a behavior. What do we do about this behavior? And what does this child need to do? And what does he need to learn to do? Or what does she need to, it was more about looking at a child's, like, who that child is, but also the circumstances, what happened before, what happened after. And now the element is not only that, but what am I doing? What am I saying? Am I really being supportive? Am I antagonizing the situation? Am I making it worse? Am I using language that doesn't support the child? Am I allowing children to have their own emotional experiences, or am I uncomfortable with that? Do I silence children? Shh, you're okay, you're okay. And not recognize the impact of those words? Do I dismiss children's emotions? Do I help them learn to problem solve? Or do I get annoyed so quickly that I just say, you're not going to get to play with that trike if you can't share or take turns? See, I come in with all of those perspectives, ideas, beliefs, and it impacts my interactions with children. So this work is really hard because it requires that we take an honest look at how we show up for children every single day. And we have to be willing to be self-reflective, to be accountable, to take responsibility for our actions and behaviors. And we have to be willing to apologize to children when we aren't as supportive as we should be, or when we say the things that we shouldn't say, and you're still learning how to, right? Just like children, we're still learning how to. Like, we're still learning how to say this instead of that, and oops, like I forgot. Like in the moment, I went back to what was comfortable and familiar, and I forgot to say this instead of that. Like, as grown-ups, we need to take responsibility for our actions, behaviors, and even the thoughts that we have. And we have to acknowledge and be willing to apologize to children, because we are also still learning. So I want you to really think about this, because again, the responsibility we have is not just to figure out why the child's behaving a certain way. So often when I observe as a consultant going into classrooms or into programs, so often what I observe is that a child is simply communicating their needs, but the adult has a low tolerance, is frustrated, doesn't know what to do, or maybe their own personal background is to use a punishment, is to take something away, is to try to make the child feel bad, so then maybe then they'll act right. See, none of those strategies are appropriate for young children, or for any child for that matter. But we come in with those personal experiences, so we have to be willing to be self-reflective and to recognize when we're doing these things, and to continue professional development so that we are continually uncovering things that we may have experienced in life. But what we know now, given all the research that we have around social and emotional learning and development, that the long-term impact of that is not what we want for children. So we have to be willing to change and to make those changes. And this work is hard. It's hard. Sometimes a child will do something that is irritating for you. Or not only that, sometimes we are working with children that do have so many things happening in their lives that we want to help, and we want to be able to make a better experience for the child, but sometimes we're at a loss. And so sometimes asking for help, figuring out what the resources are in your area, if there are any resources, being able to work collaboratively with colleagues. If you're in a family childcare program and you're isolated and you don't have a lot of people that you can talk to, find a network in your area, reach out to others. And it's hard because you're with children all day long, every single day of the week. Finding that time, especially if it's just you in your home, is hard. And we also need the support from colleagues and from friends who have an understanding of what it's like to care for children all day long, so that we can be supportive to one another, that you can continue to get the resources and the professional support that you need to continue the process, again, of being self-aware, being self-reflective, and continually changing and learning as we gain more information about supporting children's social and emotional learning. When I was a young teacher, I went to a conference, and the speaker was talking about not using praise with children, and the importance or the impact of using words like good job, or I like the way you cleaned up the blocks. And that was a life-changing experience for me, but I was a person who had been trained to say good job, good job, good job, good job. And so I go to this conference and I hear from a speaker who gave very sound reason as to why not to say those things. And I'm sitting here thinking, how am I going to make this shift? like, because you're in the middle of it. And what do I say instead? And one of the strategies that I found to be very, very helpful was I would go back to my classroom of kids and I would say to them, I went to teacher school. I went to teacher school. And at teacher school, I learned that I'm supposed to say, you did it, instead of good job. I want you to be able to look at what you did and say, I did that. And that's what's most important. Not that I think if you did a good job or not, because I love you because you're here, because you exist, because you're in our classroom. It doesn't matter what you do or how you do it. I'm going to love you no matter what. What I want is for you to be able to look at something and go, I did that. So it was the best thing I could have ever done, because I asked my group of kids, I need your help. I need you to help me remember if I slip, because when you're trying to make a change, it's really hard sometimes. And I'll slip and I'll forget and I'll say good job. And I want you to stop me and go, no, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say, you did it instead. And I'll tell you, they were the best ever. And it took me a matter of a couple weeks to change how I spoke to children when it came to encouraging them as opposed to praising them. And that was like a really, really long time ago. Like I was at least 25 years ago, if not longer. And it was a strategy that I used ever since then. Every time I went to teacher school, I would go back and tell my kids what I learned and the things that we were going to work on and the things that I was going to work on, because we're all human, we're all learning. And I wanted children to know that. I wanted the children in my classroom to know that I am imperfect and I'm still learning too. And together we will learn and we will help each other. You help me and I help you. And collectively, we're going to learn and grow and do amazing things.